probably a number of you before. I do want to make a special thank you to this community because it has been one of the best at helping out with our nonprofits. And when I got involved about 4 years ago with the county policy, we were pushing to give more money to nonprofits in the county. And when the new commissioners came in 2006, they set aside a certain percentage for nonprofits because I believe that nonprofits are an incredible investment in your community because there's a multiplier effect. You have all kinds of volunteers who add on to the nonprofits. And some might have myself been involved in a nonprofit. I appreciate that. And of course, I want to thank Jack here, who's been a real leader in our community. This is going off my prepared remarks, but I was listening to the school board people, and I have a special reason to run for commissioner, and it's right nearby. I'm not a native from here, you probably can tell from my accent, but I moved here when I was 25 in 1972. My kids went to the schools here, and my daughter said, I will never live in Chatham County, it's too rural, hick, you know. But now we have two precious grandbabies. And when she got pregnant with the second one, she said, I want to be back home near my grandparents. So I'm a grandparent, and I'm proud of it. But my daughter lives just across the street in Governor's Lake. So I visit this way all the time. And I wanted to comment, because there were two questions that I think, commissioners do fund schools. And so we have a cooperative relationship with the school board. And it's important to me, as someone who's been working for the last year as Secretary of Economic Development Corporation and as one of the co-chairs of the subcommittee that's been working with the UNC consultants who we hired to bring about Chatham's first strategic plan. It's no question in all the literature that education in a community is the most important economic development infrastructure you have. And I just wanted to mention, someone asked about dropouts. And there was one thing I think that was left out is mentors. And I think Ms. Munn had a good point about expectations. I grew up in California. My dad was working class. My next door neighbor's dad was a janitor. The next door neighbor's dad over there drove a bread truck, and the other dad was a carpenter. Now, back in the 50s, we didn't think that that meant we were poor or anything. But I grew up in California where the expectations of the community and our families was that we were going to go to college and we were going to make it. And believe it or not, every one of us went to college, and most of us went to graduate schools. And we were all working class people. We were that middle 80% there that we were talking about. Well, my wife, who works with, was the president of Chatham Together, was a mentor. And I don't know the lady that mentioned this, but I was amazed. This girl, like 11 or 12, and the idea was that you were supposed to socialize with her. But the circumstance in this girl's family was so bad that she became essentially a tutor. She had a grandparent that took care of her. They had, if you gave her anything, it disappeared from the house. And eventually my wife got her girlfriends to each mentor a different girl in this family. Well, every one of them has graduated from high school. The women had to actually become like the parent with the school system. And unfortunately, though, there were no mentors for the boys. And every single one of them is in jail. So I think that is something that we really need to incorporate into our schools. Now, someone asked me why I'm running for county commissioner and wondered whether I was against somebody I'm running. And my answer was, and is, in 40 years ago, actually I have 40 years of public policy experience, and my very first campaign was in 1968. And you all probably remember that year was a pretty perilous year. And my family were all Republicans. And, but in college, in those years, I went to college in 65, graduated in 69, a lot of people changed, and I became a Democrat, and I worked for Robert Kennedy as a canvasser. And unfortunately, the tragedy we all know happened with that. But Robert Kennedy, if you remember back in those days, had a conflict with LBJ, and when they were looking for someone to run against LBJ, they went to Robert Kennedy, and he said, well, I don't want to do it because it's going to look like it's personal. And so they got Eugene McCarthy to run. Of course, you know what happened in New Hampshire, and then LBJ dropped out, and then Robert Kennedy ran. And he was asked, and some people were upset about this, why are you running? And he said, and I'm not quoting this exactly, I'm just giving it my memory, that I am not running against any one man or any one person. I'm running because we are in perilous times. We have very difficult issues that we're facing. And I feel I have ideas that can help move this country forward. And finally, he said, I feel I have no choice. I am so committed to what needs to be changed that I feel I have to run. Now, I would never compare myself to Robert Kennedy, but I have the same feeling, and that's why I'm running. Chatham County is facing extremely challenging times with growth pressures, with loss of jobs, and I feel I have the experience and the education and knowledge to make a difference in this county. Now, some of you know I started the Chatham Coalition, and I've been very active in helping elect commissioners. I helped elect the 3 that are in now. And since that time, and I won't go into details, but I've been working with them very closely. I actually drafted for the commissioners the moratorium, or at least the draft of the moratorium ordinance that they put into effect. I've been working on the strategic plan. I've been working on affordable housing. But some people seem to think that that is the sum total of my background. But I have training in planning school. I did run a newspaper here for 11 years, between 1973 and 84, and this was a countywide newspaper. And I covered all of the county. I sold ads all over the county, so I feel I know this county very well. Also, and since that, after I sold my newspaper, I became an attorney. And one of the things, I was a trial attorney, I did employment law, civil rights law, and as a volunteer lawyer, I did land use law. And as an attorney and as a planner, one of the most important things is strategic planning. If you don't plan, you're not going to get there. And that is one of the things that both Sally and I are committed to, is being strategic in our planning. An example is with the infrastructure issues we have. Water, sewer, and there's others that are in a school location, high-speed internet. We should be planning in our land use where and how those are going to be located, what kinds of populations we want to have, and where they're located first before we actually develop these. And the final thing is, and Sally alluded to this, open government. Now, Mr. Barnes talked about the fact that they've been having public meetings. My experience is public hearings tend to be people talk past each other. We want to go beyond that. One thing is the citizen advisory boards to be more deliberative bodies. If you had one out in this part of the county, for example, the idea would be that the citizens would bring issues up to the commissioners that they would want to be addressing. But the other is that any major issue would be brought to you so you can get early input before there's an official public hearing. Another beef of mine is I believe that all major deliberations, discussions, votes should be done at night meetings, not at work sessions during the day when citizens can't attend. There is way too much business being done then.